Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Run Wild with Us, Ask Us Anything. So, you are here now with Chris Major, one of my fantastic editors and authors, and myself, Lisa Diane Kastner. I'm the founder and executive editor of Running Wild Press, and technically Rise as well. And we are here to answer whatever you want to ask us. For those of you who are not familiar with how this goes down, it's really actually pretty simple. So, one, Chris and I are just going to sit here a little bit and we're going to chat. And for you have any questions, seriously, anything at all, go ahead, pop it into the comments section. What'll happen is I'll then repeat whatever your question is, and Chris and I will use this as an opportunity to respond to those questions. So pretty simple. Now, mind you, if you ask something that's kind of weird or bizarre, I may not actually repeat that question. It may kind of go unanswered, but that's okay. If you do actually ask a question, or you're watching this and it is not Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific time or 7 p.m. Eastern time, this is not a big deal. Because what we do is we actually go back and we look through all our comments in the subsequent week just to see, hey guys, what's going on? Are there any questions that you may have come up with from Wednesday to Wednesday? And if you do, again, not a big deal, because what we do is we'll bring it up in that next week's session. So with that, I want to say hey to Alicia. Alicia is also one of our authors, and I'm actually going to talk about Alicia in a minute. I know she'll be super excited about that. And she's just here to say hey, Lisa and Chris. So hey, Alicia. Also, kind of as a heads up, we almost always have little visitors. Like, see this little tail here? I have two cats, the Master and Margarita, and boy, do they love attention. And even more so, they love your attention. So don't be surprised if suddenly you see my camera kind of goes like this, or if there's the little cat tail that shows up. That would be either Master or Margarita. This time it is Margarita. So
I love that name, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I am a fan of Bulgakov's The Master and Margarita. And when a dear friend of mine, Sona Aslanian, we went to there used to be a pet shop where they took in strays, and Master and Margarita had been brought in, I think literally the day before. They were only 7 weeks old, so you can't really adopt pets here until they're 8 weeks old.
Okay.
We saw them, and I was like, I can't separate a brother and sister.
Right.
So that meant that we had to bring them both home. So, okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of bragging on Alicia for a minute. So Alicia's book, Something is Better Than Nothing, which is a memoir about her experiences when her husband came back with PTSD, as well as during the same period her father had passed away. It's our first book that we're publishing this year. It comes out in March, and it was selected as a BookBub featured selection for March. So
nice,
right? Isn't that awesome?
It is. So, congratulations.
Good on Alicia. Congratulations. That's huge. If you are watching this and you're like, what the heck is a BookBub? So I encourage you to go ahead and look it up. It's a BookBub. And it's a fantastic service that they will send you out emails to let you know about up and coming stories, up and coming novels. They'll also tell you about deals. So, like, let's say you're a huge fan of mysteries or romance or, magical realism or dark fiction, whatever. And there's going to be a deal on an ebook, 99 cents, $1.99, whatever the case may be. They have this great blast that goes out. So this way you can actually experiment and find out about new authors without anything big. You don't have to do a big investment.
Yeah. So, and it's a really good way to kind of put it in people's minds that, you have something coming out, put in people's minds that they should be on the lookout for your stuff. So yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. Now, for Alicia, hers is all about a new release. And because of that, it's not actually, there isn't a discount associated with it, but it's BookBub is very highly regarded. And so if they're telling you like this is a book that you want to check out, then it's probably a book you want to check out. So again, huge congratulations to Alicia. And then, so now I'm just going to turn it over to Chris. So how was your week?
My week, it was good. I had a good week. Got a haircut. Good and boring. I'm a pretty boring person. Yeah, it was pretty good. Got some words in, some really good words writing. So that's good. Sometimes it feels like you're kind of shoveling crap when you're working, but sometimes you go back and look at it and it's okay. So I went back and looked at some of the stuff I did. So I had a good work week. It was pretty good. How about you?
Oh, cool. Yeah. So this week I finished a manuscript that I had been working on for a little bit.
Nice.
It was an idea I had. Actually, change that. It started off as a short story that I had submitted to Weird Tales, and it made the top 25, which was a big deal because there was like something crazy, like 10,000.
Oh, wow. Congrats.
Yeah. Thank you. And the editor was like, hey, I really like this. Did you think about making it into a novel? So to me, that's like someone's telling you, you need to make this into a novel.
Yeah, that's how Catcher in the Rye. J.D. Salinger wrote A Slight Rebellion Off Madison, a short story.
Really?
And yeah, and that's what with Holden Caulfield, and he was told he should make it into a novel and Catcher in the Rye. So
nice. Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. So I did it. So I finished the manuscript and I sent it out to 4 readers. And I'm just waiting for their feedback. And then once I get their feedback and I integrate it, like make any kind of adjustments that need to be made, then I'll send it out to be queried to some agents. So, and it's funny. So I have had people ask me this before, and Chris, I don't know how you feel about this, but a bunch of times people will just ask me like, well, why do you want an agent? Why wouldn't you just publish it? You run a press, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because from my perspective, I view like Running Wild's a brand, right?
Right.
Running Wild Press is basically a brand. And Rise is a brand under Running Wild LLC. But I'm also a brand. And the more
that's a good way.
Right? The more ways I can get the word out about myself or any of the other 3 brands I just mentioned, fabulous. Because what that means is that it draws attention to the other ones as well. So I'd rather get an agent who will then help me get published with a different publisher, and then I can leverage and we can leverage all the publicity and marketing that would be used against my titles to the advantage of everybody else in our list.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Mm-hmm. I didn't think about that. That's pretty good. Yeah, that's a good idea.
So I actually, I'm one of those strange ones that I actually encourage our authors to go ahead and, submit their work to other presses, especially if they're mid or large size, because we're small in comparison. And I encourage them to get agents, because the more successful you guys are, the more successful we all are,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So it was good. And now I'm working on a book that we haven't announced yet that we're going to be publishing in 2022. What I need to do is we have a bunch of submissions that are either waiting to be read or we haven't decided yet if we're going to pick it up or not for 2022. And I need to get on that. So
yeah, I mean, everybody's behind on reading in the business these days because of excuse me, the pandemic. So yeah, sorry for that, guys, but yeah, it's a weird time. It's a really weird time. So, but submissions will be read as always, and taken seriously. So it just takes a little while to get combed through all of them. So just bear with us.
Yep, that's very true. And admittedly, we only publish because actually one of our other editors, um, Andrew, had asked me how many books do we publish of all the submissions that we get, and it forced me to actually calculate it. It's about 4%. So, because mind you, we only publish between, I don't know, it's like 12 and 18 books a year. So if you're talking hundreds of submissions that we get,
Right.
we're not gonna, it's not surprising that it's such a small percentage. So,
And that's because it's not that manuscripts aren't always good. It's time. Sometimes it's just that what goes into editing, production of a book, marketing. It just takes a lot of time to get all those things together. And so that's the reason. Typically, that's with any press you go to when you're researching presses, they may tell you they only publish X amount of titles. It's not always because maybe of their size or, it's just their resources. It could be time, money, production, all those things. So it doesn't necessarily mean that your manuscript wasn't good or, we don't want it. It's just takes a lot of time to get a book from completed and on shelves and ebooks and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And mind you, we're pretty fast compared to other presses, meaning like once your book is accepted, it's typically, I don't know, maybe a year to 18 months, unless, the authors requested that it's actually published further out. So, that's actually pretty fast. Because what we want to do now, mind you, because this is something that we don't have control over. We always send all of our stories out to be reviewed. And what that means, though, is that we need to follow the rules of those reviewers. And pretty much every well-known reviewer, meaning like LA Times, New York Times, New Yorker, the New Republic, anyway, all the big ones, they insist on 4 to 6 months lead time. So if we send them a book before then or after that, then they won't even look at it. And even when we send it 4 to 6 months beforehand, that doesn't even mean that they're absolutely 100% going to review it. It just means they're going to consider it. So.
Right.
Yeah. If there wasn't that much, if they didn't need that much lead time, I would say we would probably have books on shelves more like 9 to 12 months out. Again, still giving some time for, for the books to be reviewed and everything. But yeah.
So it does take time. Yes, the prime resource of everything is time. So sometimes that's what it is.
That's right. Now, mind you, we are recruiting a lot more editors right now, to Chris's point, to help us get more and more engaged so we can not only get through all the submissions that are potential yeses, but also so that we can publish more and get more books out, because there are so many fantastic stories out there, right?
Yes, yes, there are. And we want as many.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I think you froze a bit. There we go.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so if you are someone who has sent us a submission and you have not heard from us, please view this as a positive, because this means that you are still in the running to be published by us, potentially in 2022. We pretty much have a full slate right now for 2021, and we are looking at 2022. Now, if we do end up recruiting plenty of stories for 2022, then we're probably going to start looking at 2023. And I know for some people that's like a huge disappointment, because it's like, what the heck? we're in 2021. Why are you talking about 2 years out? Well, it's for all the reasons that Chris and I just mentioned, right? We love you. We love your stories. We would love to partner with you and get them out there to amazing fans who will absolutely adore them. But there's only so many resources, and
Right.
you know, so anyway, so that's that. Um, Now, I'm going to do a quick reminder that for those of you who are watching, this is Run Wild with Us, Ask Chris and Lisa Anything. I am Lisa. I'm the founder and executive editor of Running Wild Press. And this is Chris Major, who is one of our amazing editors, as well as one of our authors. And we are here to answer any questions you have around publishing, creative writing, distribution, social media, marketing, and any kind of thing that you've got. Now, if you're watching this, it is not Wednesday between 4 and 5 p.m. Pacific time or 7 and 8 p.m. Eastern time. This is not a big deal. Go ahead, pop your questions in the comments section, and we will be sure to go back, check it out, and we will come back on the subsequent Wednesday with whatever answer we've concocted in between the 2 Wednesdays. So Chris, what are you working on right now? Both either editing or creatively?
Creatively, I'm working on my novella, A Reflection of Nature. Working title, but that's what I'm working on. It's been giving me fits for a while, but I'm really excited about it. The goal is for people to be entertained and kind of, I don't know. Baldwin, I think, said that, all art should be protest art. So I think that's kind of what I aim for a little bit in my work. So yeah, just working on the novella, rounding it out, ironing it out. And yeah, it's come together nicely. So just I'm sending it out to a few readers to just kind of get some feedback. Like you said, you did just get some feedback. To just kind of see where it is, see what kind of shape it's in. It's hard sometimes when you're looking at your own stuff to be a good judge of, kind of how the reader would receive it. So sometimes you do need another set of eyes on your work in order to just get a good feel for what it's doing. So that is what I am working on currently at the moment.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's funny because I remember when I was younger, I used to write and I thought, oh my gosh, I have to get it right like on the first revision. And then I learned that it's, for me, just get it on the page, right? And then it's through the revisions is when you really find the gold.
Right.
So
yeah, like I call it the vomit stage. When you just sit down and go to work and just like get it on the page, like you said, and then you go back and then you kind of add some structure and things like that. But yeah, that's the thing. The vomit stage is you just sit and you just go. So
yeah.
So yeah, that's. I think a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people do think that first draft. Oh, I finished the manuscript. I finished the piece, and it's good. It's. I'm done. I can submit it. It's like, I mean, every first draft. I mean, it's bad. It's bad. Well, at least in comparison to what you could do. Right. In comparison to what you could do if you revised.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's just part of it. But yeah, that vomit stage though, it's important just to run through it all the way through. So
now it's interesting you bring up the vomit stage because another one of the stories that we're putting out is called American Cycle by Larry Beckett. And it's actually a series of narrative poems all about different historical periods or narratives or like well-known mythologies around the American experience. And he literally has been revising these for 35 years.
Wow.
Right? Crazy.
That is nuts.
I had the good fortune, I met Larry, I believe it was at AWP a couple of years ago. And he looked up Running Wild, and he really loved our catalog, and he loved everything, that we've been doing and what we've been publishing, and had come to me and asked if I would be interested, because we actually did publish one of the narrative poems as well. And for those of you who don't know who Larry Beckett is, I heavily encourage you to go ahead and Google him. Larry, Larry, Beckett, Beckett. He is an icon, just so you know, within the poetry circles in America. And so we are incredibly blessed to have the opportunity to publish him. I actually had a few friends who are poets. When they found out that we are publishing Larry in April, they were just like, where you need to sign me up now. So, definitely, guys, definitely check him out. And going back a little bit, one thing that I think is really important with story today is that, to your point, to your and Baldwin's point, is that it's a great way. I mean, yes, we always want to entertain, but we also use it as a means of enlightening or providing visibility to other perspectives and other lifestyles or other experiences that people wouldn't typically be exposed to.
Right.
And because it's because it's entertainment, it's done in a tangible way that's easy to digest, if that makes sense, right?
Yes. And typically what you find is that that's when kind of those perspectives and lifestyles and all those things, that's when it sticks with people. Mm-hmm. When it's packaged in a story, in any form, film, literature, music, when it's packaged into something, like you said, easy to digest, it sticks with you. And, once it does, it's kind of always there. So that's a good point.
And it can oftentimes completely change someone's perspective on a topic, because we're so inundated by media and by, very specific biases or cliches that we may not realize are cliche, or may not realize it's a very one-sided perspective, right?
Right.
So by having it exposed either through, it could be through memoir, it could be through short story, it could be through novella, novel. It doesn't have to be through nonfiction. It absolutely, oftentimes, some of the best ways to enlighten people is through something that's entertaining, but also provides that different perspective.
Right.
And it can 100% be through fiction. So.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, when they pick up a nonfiction book, they want it straight, no sugar coated. They just want the information, mm-hmm. And it's a lot more kind of narrow visioned as far as you go into a bookstore. I want to buy a book on like Alicia's PTSD, mm-hmm. and they'll just go and they read and they get kind of like a dry black and white idea of what that is and what it entails. But like in Alicia's memoir, but when told in a story, it kind of it charms you a bit, and it does, and it adds another level, a deeper level of understanding, because you get to see how these people deal with that kind of thing. You get to see the lives of these people, the inner kind of workings of their relationship. And a lot of times you don't get that in nonfiction, or you have to fish for it if it's there. So that's definitely a benefit of fiction, is that it's kind of like giving your kids their medicine and candy or something. I don't know.
Well, what's cool about memoir, because I remember when memoir, this will tell you how old I am, but I remember when memoir became a thing, because before memoir, it was really all about biographies, right? Biographies were everywhere, and that's very third person. It's much drier, to your point, right? It's about it's typically around the person's entire experience. That individual, typically, they haven't written it, right? And it's specifically fact-based, as it should be.
Right.
Now, memoir, what's cool about memoir, although it is biased, right, because it is that individual's perspective, it can be much more entertaining because it is that one person's perspective. But to your point, that's the advantage of, like, if you want to find something that you can have it both be entertaining and you're getting multiple perspectives, right? That's where doing more fiction around it, that it may actually be based on fact, comes in,
Right.
because you can broaden it, right?
Right. That's what writing is. People think, even anytime you do creative nonfiction, and the difference between creative nonfiction and, I guess, I don't know what to call just nonfiction, is that nonfiction, a lot of times it reads like a textbook. But creative nonfiction, that's how you can write a memoir. You don't have to have every single detail be the same. That's really in fiction too. That's writing.
Right.
When you take kind of some things that are factual and actually happened, and if you write a story about a red chair, you can make up that there was a coffee mug on the table, if it enhances the story. Right. But the what makes it nonfiction is that there really is a red chair. And what makes it creative nonfiction is that you made up the mug on the table. It doesn't make it fiction so long as there's this real, you do lean more towards the factual side. You lean more towards the reality of the story you're telling.
Right. Yep, totally. Cremo says, bonjour, Lisa and Chris. Bonjour, Cree. Awesome to see you. Cool. So I want to also bring up, so in May, we are bringing forward another great story called Whales Swim Naked by Eric Gethers. Now, this actually has a really interesting backstory to it. So Eric, he actually lives in France, and Eric had written this because he was inspired. He had heard about a man who was so depressed he ate himself to death.
Wow.
Yep. And the reason, which that's pretty impressive, because I've overeaten before. I can't even imagine eating to the point.
I've overeaten too. It's bad. Yeah, it's terrible.
It is. It's like, oh, you just don't want to move. So right. To do it to the point of death is like, although I have also more than thoroughly enjoyed French cuisine in France, or Parisian cuisine in Paris. And I can admit, I could see why someone may desire to do that, but then actually being able to do that is a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But now what is interesting / sad is the reason this gentleman ate himself to death so this is the true part that the fictional story is based on, was because he had gotten married and he thought he was in this ideal relationship, and him and his wife had been together all of a year. And on their 1-year anniversary, they had this fantastic meal, and she just came out and said every day when he went out to work, she was actually having affairs. She would bring home random men, like 2 or 3 a day.
Wow.
And he just was so beyond devastated by that, he decided to eat himself to death. So Eric took that concept and then made it into Whales Swim Naked. Now, what's nice about Whales Swim Naked is, let me just put it this way. The characters who are wronged, they get even. I'll just leave it there.
Yeah.
Because there's quite a bit of wrongs that happen. So just so you know, if you start to read it and you're like, oh, don't worry. By the end of it,
right.
All's made right.
I'm glad you said that, because there's no way I could go into a book knowing that's happening and there's not some kind of something.
Yep. Everything is made right. So, well, in revenge terms.
Right.
So with that in mind, just also, this book was originally published in France, and it was compared to works by John Irving. And it was actually nominated for Book of the Year by Rolling Stone, and was given like all these amazing reviews. So that's another one that, if you have a chance to pick up, again, that's going to come out in May. I suggest definitely picking it up, because it's one that there's a lot of things that are pretty shocking that happen in it. But again, everybody, let's just say everyone gets their comeuppance. So
That's good. Yes, that's good to know.
Okay, so guys, um, just a reminder. So I am here with Chris Major. I'm Lisa Kastner. I'm the founder and executive editor of Running Wild Press, and I'm here with Chris, who's one of our phenomenal authors as well as editors. And we are here to answer whatever questions you have, and any kind of questions that you have, just go ahead and pop it in the comments section. And what happens is I will repeat whatever those questions may be, and Chris and I will respond. So it can be on anything. It can be around publishing. It can be around editing. It can be around submissions. It could be around marketing, creative writing. I don't know. Social media. Because, honey, we are everywhere.
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are. And so just go ahead, pop those questions in the chat, and we will do our best to answer them. So with that, I don't know, Chris, if you had any questions for me based on our previous conversations.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I did have a question. So I know you have a manuscript now. Is this your first full length manuscript that you've written? Book length manuscript, I mean, or have you written any before?
So I wrote one of the first books that I experimented with for Running Wild was a book that I wrote over several years and published it, and it got actually pretty good reviews. And of course, that means I can't remember the name of it right now. But I've written full length one, including the one that we published and the one I just finished, 4.
Oh, nice.
And then several short stories, a few novellas, a bunch of microfiction. Oh, a memoir.
Okay.
I wrote a memoir. I think the memoir, though, was more like novella length.
Right.
So that was about when I was growing up. I actually died on the operating table when I was
wow
9. Not long enough to be brain dead, which is why I'm still here.
Right.
Yeah. If we hit brain dead, then obviously we would not be having this conversation.
Right. None of this. Nope,
none of this. So, yep. So I wrote that, and then a lot of shorter nonfiction.
Real quick, a lot of people don't know, like a lot of writers, if you write a memoir, actually, if I would tell someone who's just sitting down for the first time to punch keys, I'd say write a memoir. And then getting better, when you're trying to get better, do short stories. A lot of times I write a memoir too, and a lot of times I just go back to my memoir and I'll mine it for stories. I'll just go back and read about everything. I'm like, oh, okay, chapter 6. That's a pretty good event. I just take it and turn it into a piece of fiction and then, send it out. So it's interesting. I just want to say that. So that's cool.
No, that's actually a cool idea, because I know several people that they basically go back to their diary, or like, I know a lot of people, like, before they go to bed, they write notes, or when they wake up in the morning, they write notes, and they'll just go back, and to your point, they'll mine those for new stories. So
yeah.
What I like to do is sort of a blend of that. Like, I'll take things that I find really interesting in the press, or like that's in the media, or in a conversation that I'm having with someone, and then I'll go back and find like historic instances of something that is like bizarre, and I'll also look at mythology and legends, and kind of see how I could kind of marry all of it together to create something new.
That's good.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about looking at maybe like news and stuff, though. I never thought about that.
Yeah, I got this idea for a story that I never wrote the full length. I basically wrote a pitch for it to be made into a graphic novel series called The Seventh Godchild. And I think it's in I want to say in Brazil, there was a legend that the seventh godchild would become I think it's a werewolf.
Mm.
Yep. So, or some other, like, maybe it's a shapeshifter.
Right.
And so I mined that and I made it where the president of the country declared that if anybody had a seventh godchild, then that president, or seventh child, then that child would become their godchild.
Ah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
So yeah, I mean, you just find weird stuff like that where it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, sure, let me see what can
Right.
I do with this,
Right.
Mm-hmm. Joe Newcomer says, "Hey Joe, thanks so much for taking the time to be available to us. If you could pick a popular or classic novel to describe the kind of books you'd love to publish, what would it be? Maybe a top 5 from each of you. I'm sure picking just one may be difficult." I don't know. So I guess, thank you, Joe. That's a great question. So, Chris, I'm going to be a wuss and I'm going to ask you first.
No problem. Let's see. So if you could pick a popular or classic novel to describe the kind of books you'd love to publish. Jeez. What? The Picture of Dorian Gray I always found to be really good. Just kind of the dynamics of Dorian's relationship with his two kind of older artists who kind of guide him, and just to see kind of his fall and how it happens throughout the course of the novel, and it's just fun. So definitely something like that. Let's see, top 5. She's Dorian Gray. If I pick 5, definitely Dracula, but that's just because I don't know. I talk about it a lot, but I really like that. I think Bram Stoker knocked it out of the park.
Well, and
classic.
the original Dracula is not like, if anybody goes back and reads the original Dracula, it is not like what you see on film.
Right. People, people just, they took that and ran with it, but it's not, it's nothing like kind of what we know, Dracula to be, kind of movies and stuff. I think another novel, For Whom the Bell Tolls by Hemingway, I think is a good one. Real quick, this is hard. This is really hard. Classic. I don't know. I can't think of anything else at the time. I like reading. Typically, I don't know. I have this weird thing where I consider a book a classic if it's been in print for like 20 years. So if you can still walk into, a bookstore, and after 20 years, the book, it may be less than that, the book is still on the shelf and you don't have to order it. Like, it's still on the shelf, meaning people are actively buying it. I consider that a classic. So, kind of with that perspective, it broadens what, you would consider a classic novel to be. So definitely that. But those are 3. I'll try. Yes, 5. I'll try and come on with them.
Well, I can give a couple.
Okay.
But I want to give context too. So I actually love cross genre. So I would call these more like inspirational books, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So the first one is Tom Sawyer. Now, more so because I love Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn's relationship and how they both mature and grow during the course of the story.
Right.
I already mentioned The Master and Margarita.
Mm-hmm.
David Copperfield, again, another classic. Again, it's interesting to see how the characters mature and grow, throughout it. Total bias on my part, Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet by Jamie Ford.
Okay.
So I had the blessing. I used to be one of the editors for an online journal called the Piccolata Review, and we published a short story called "I Am Not Chinese," and which was by Jamie. And it was actually a short story that I championed at Piccolata, and "I Am Not Chinese" became Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet. So
Nice.
I definitely have a bias.
Right.
Like Water for Chocolate, if you've ever actually read the book, is fantastic.
One of my favorite rappers has an album named after that. And I didn't know it was a book. So that's
yeah.
a book first. It's good to know.
And it was a film as well.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and there's another one, which of course I'm not going to remember, the elephant. Darn. Oh well.
You know who wrote it?
Hmm?
You know who wrote it? If I can jog your memory.
I can see the cover in my head.
Okay.
It's a dual narrative. One is about a couple in a retirement home, and one of them is he, I believe, has dementia, and the secondary narrative is actually like how they met. So it's absolutely beautifully done. It's actually how I learned how to write a dual narrative.
Oh, nice.
Joe Newcomer says, I just finished Master and Margarita. Great pick. Thank you. And just because he feels like it, this is my cat Master, who's named who's named after the book. Dorian Gray as well. Yeah, actually, I am also a big fan of Dorian Gray.
Yeah, I think it's a fun read.
Thank you for the answers. It's definitely cool to know your ideal novels. I admit, I think both Chris and I have pretty eclectic tastes.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest takeaway, you know. I mean, we mentioned books across every genre that you can think of.
Right.
So I would say if you are looking at our catalog for books to read, or if you are someone who is looking to be published by us, just keep that in mind. You know, we don't only read a specific genre. You know, we, not just Chris and I, but actually all of our editors all read pretty widely.
Yeah, and that's because people, I'm of the school of thought that people will read anything if it's written well. So yeah, so I think
I hope so.
Yeah. I think there's this one book someone told me about, I can't remember the title, where the entire book was one sentence, like the way in which they crafted the grammar.
Yes, I know exactly. That used to be a contest where you basically write an entire story in one sentence.
Oh, wow.
It was what you're talking about was written by Hemingway, and it was something like baby shoes for sale, never used, or something like that.
Right. Yeah, it was like baby shoes for sale. Something that you're right. I can't remember. I'm gonna murder it.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And then it became a thing where like microfiction publishers would put out contests to see if you could do something as like mind blowing as what Hemingway did in like one or two sentences. So
right. Mm-hmm. And I think, and also to the point about if it's good, people will read it, is I think The Mezzanine was written about like a guy was on his lunch break from work, and the whole book takes place between like the time he started lunch till he went back to work. So good writing is good writing. I mean, that's just what it is. So you really can write almost anything, right? You know, there's things you can't put on paper that you shouldn't put on paper, but good writing is good writing, and that's what we want. We just want good writing.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, I mean, if it's good writing, then A, if you're a writer, you can learn from it, and B, if you're a reader, why not devour it, right? It's more fun that way. And I'm going to include in good writing not just short stories and novels and memoirs and biographies, but I'm going to include essays, graphic novels, comic books, right? Those that are a wonderful combination of the visual form as well as the written form. I think, you know, if it's a great story, it's a great story. It does not matter
Right.
form. So
I remember when I was a kid reading graphic novels, like just comic books, Batman, Spider-Man, all those guys, and I still can't get them out of my head. Like they were written really well when you think about it. You sitting and then couple that with the fact they had images. Geez, it was like again, good writing is good writing. That's just what it is.
I mean, I admit when I was a kid, my mom was not into me reading comic books, and then when I finally was smart enough to sneak comic books anyway, I found that, and this is done intentionally. Like most comic books are written as a vignette, right? So it's basically it's a part of a story. There's a cliffhanger, right? And the intent is so that you will then pick up the next comic book, right?
Right.
In that series, and then in totality, all of those comic books within that imprint or within that series, you know, creates the full narrative, which is brilliant. That is such a smart marketing technique. I cannot tell you. That said, I prefer graphic novels, or now what you can do is a lot of comic book companies, they'll reprint that whole series in more of like a graphic novel form, so that you can get the full story. Because I'll lie in bed, I'll just read the whole thing in one sitting, you know,
breeze through it.
Yeah, I just think it's a lot of fun. It's more
I like when you find a book and you can do that too. I found Sister Soldier wrote The Coldest Winter Ever, and I went. My mom suggested it, and I went and I bought it. And you know, before I knew it, I was like halfway through the book. I was like, "What? Heck, I'm just gonna finish it," and I finished it in a day. I've never finished a book in a day, but it was pretty good. So yeah, it was. Yeah, it just made me think about that.
Now, who was your biggest influence in terms of like picking new stuff?
Picking like authors?
Yeah.
I have a college friend who surprisingly he's not a writer. I'm a writer. I have a college. I was the music guy in our kind of group, and he was the book guy. But he would always send me books or suggest books. I have two people really, and then my uncle. I actually just helped him move, and he has an ungodly amount of books. But he always suggested authors. I may not always like the book he suggests, but you know, there may be another thing the author wrote. That's another thing too. People don't know when you're a writer, people think one book and you blow up. And it's like, you don't understand, like it's your catalog. It's all of them. You don't make your money writing off of one book and you get all these big, you know, royalty checks. It's like there's writers with 5 books, 6 books out. So you multiply that by 5 or 6, what you're getting. And then that's where that comes from. But anyway, I digress. My uncle, he has books, and my college friend, they've given me enough good books, and I don't like everything they give. They've given me enough good books so I trust their recommendation. I think that's important because books are a time commitment. So I think when somebody after a couple of books I get, and I'm not, you know, and I like them, or at least I like the author, I will trust, you know, kind of that opinion. So, hey, Chris, you should read such and such. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I'll check them out. Right. And I don't just buy an author's book. I buy them, which, you know, watch their interviews. I, read their interviews, everything. I consume everything about them, just to kind of learn the lifestyle that they lived as a writer, and as well as their work. And a lot of times, if you learn their lifestyle, you can actually find them in their work. You can actually find who they are. Is this character or that character or all the characters? That's the biggest thing I learned from David Foster Wallace. I can't tell you how much I like him. But he did that in Infinite Jest. He'd take all his traits and put them into other individual characters, and kind of all the characters were him in some kind of way. Mm-hmm. And so that's like a little trick I learned. You made a good point about books. Sometimes, you know, if you're a writer, you read to learn. And then sometimes you read, just for fun. So, because reading is definitely, it's part of the work. It's part of writing. It has to be treated like a job.
Right.
And reading is a part of that job.
Right.
So you do read to get techniques and stuff like that. And then sometimes you just read just to, chill out and everything like that. But anyway, those are the two people who kind of helped me choose. What about you?
Well, actually, to go back a second on the one point you were making about, like, you read this one book, and it's so funny because I think all but one author I know had been writing for 10, 15 years before they hit. And I mean, they would write everything. They would write, journalism articles, they'd write short stories, they'd write, novels. Several actually had written several novels until one finally, or several full length, I guess you could say,
right,
before something finally hit. So definitely, go and check out, like, to see what other things.
And that's so interesting too. Suzanne Collins wrote like 5 books before the Hunger Games. That's a lot of books. And on top of that, like people buy books retroactively. So like you could have a whole catalog of 7 books that may not have done as well as you want them to, and you get one that does really well. It brings attention to your other 7 books. So then people go back and they read. Like John Grisham wrote A Time to Kill, and people bought it, but they didn't really buy it like they buy things now. And then I think the second one was, it was a Pelican Brief, and then people went back and bought A Time to Kill. And then A Time to Kill becomes a movie, and so it's like, that's why it's good to have more than one book, because it's it's not all I published this book, it didn't do that well. Doesn't mean your book's not good. It could just lack attention, and then you get that one book, and then all of a sudden you get fans, and your fans are like, oh, and geez, I go on about this for days. A lot of writers want everybody to buy their stuff, and it's like, no. In my personal opinion, you want a loyal fan base who will buy everything. Like there's one of my favorite. I call them poets. They're rappers. I call them poets. One of my favorite poets. One of my favorite poets said, "I'm not trying to sell 10 million records. I'm trying to sell 1 million records 10 times," which I think goes to show that you really do create kind of this cult following of people, and when they buy in, they'll buy everything. That's the goal anyway. Right. So everybody wants, everybody in the world to buy their books. It's like, no, one, you're not everybody's taste. And 2, sometimes you don't have that reach. But, would you, rather everybody give you, $5 one time, or everybody give you, $2 every time, So that's just kind of my perspective on it. But definitely, yeah, people, just because that first, second, third one that you publish, like, nobody cares. Just keep going. Write the next one, and then when the next one, and then when the one that's kind of your masterpiece, because all authors have a masterpiece. I'm of the school of thought, you could be writing for 20 years and still haven't written your masterpiece yet. Richard Ford wrote 3. Yeah, like everybody, that's how it is. Richard Ford wrote 2 or 3 books, and then he wrote The Sports Writer and won a Pulitzer Prize for it. And now, like, people go back and they buy like all of his stuff. I mean, his previous stuff.
Right.
So, that's the thing about this business. It's just slow, and it's slow all the way around. So your first book, like, people go back. I bought James Baldwin's, what was it, Notes of a Native Son, after I'd read, one of his later books. Like, that's how it works. And so a lot of people don't know that. And I think people quit writing because they say, oh, I can't. I'm not meant for this. I'm never going to make any difference. It's like, no, just keep writing. You haven't come up on your masterpiece yet.
That's right.
And, so.
Yeah,
anyway.
I agree. So who influenced me, I guess? So I was both, like, all my friends were heavily into music. So I was big into music, but I was also big into reading, because I was a hardcore introvert growing up.
Oh, yeah, nice team introvert.
Yeah.
What music are you into?
Well, my best friend, if it was Prince, she had to have it. Like
Right,
anything
right.
associated with Prince. I listen to a lot of rock, a lot of pop, um, a lot, mostly rock, and like, 'cause this is back when like heavy metal was a thing.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
But my father was a radio personality, so I grew up on big band and classical music, and then, I mean, he was a radio personality in Philadelphia, so
Wow.
um, our house always had tunes going on.
Right.
It was
That's
fantastic.
crazy. I would have loved that. My mom played music a lot too, but I would have loved that to just that'd have been nice.
Mm-hmm. Like now, I always have to have classical music playing because it feels like home for me.
Right. Right.
It makes the house feel like it's meant to be lived in.
Right.
So,
Right.
mm-hmm. But in terms of books, I think so. I did the same thing you did. Like if I found an author, I would then go back and I read absolutely everything that the author has ever written, and I would research them, and when I was younger, I mean, I actually, I think I would wander to the bookstore and then look at um, what was on like an end cap,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of see what was put out there. And then as I got older, I started to realize there were certain like types of award winners, and then I would devour that person's whole list. Like I
Right.
read something, right, and then I read everything by that author. Um, and then when I got older, I started to realize if it was a National Book Award winner, then I would probably love it. I guess I just have the same taste as the judges for the National Book
Right.
Award.
Right.
And so I would do the same thing. And what I do though is I would wait, and all you famous authors out there, go ahead and cover your ears. Because I would go to Barnes and Noble, and Barnes and Noble would have this huge clearance section. And mind you, I did not grow up with
Wow.
means. So I would wait until either my favorite authors or their like a National Book Award winner or a Pulitzer Prize winner would end up in the clearance section, and then I'd buy the books.
Clever.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, that's funny. But I do that too. I go through like the list of award winners and stuff, and it doesn't mean I become a fan of everybody that I find, but I've found some pretty good authors like that. I think I stumbled on Ta-Nehisi Coates like that, just looking through, and Diaz as well. So
love Coetzee.
Yeah, that's fun. That's interesting. I didn't think. I wish I would have thought of that. Waiting until went to the clinic. There were times where I wish I would have known that. That like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then so when I became a writer, right, when I decided that I was going to start writing, and so that was like, meaning like fiction. I was in like my mid-20s, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I hadn't written short stories or whatever before then, but like I really wanted to study it.
Right.
I would either ask my instructors, or I would just ask fellow participants in workshops and at conferences. I'd ask them what they were reading and what they really loved. And then if you go to workshops and conferences, you're almost always, the person who's teaching you is an author. And so I'd pick up their stuff and I'd study it. So
right. I had a professor like that, a poetry professor, when I realized, because I used to think, believe it or not, there was a time I thought people who taught creative writing just taught it and didn't write it.
Oh.
And then I Googled my professor. I'm like, wait, this guy's got a couple books. So yeah, I went and I read them. It was interesting. Like I was kind of like, wow, like I don't know. But I don't know what that was about me thinking that people who taught creative writing didn't write themselves. It doesn't make any sense. But that's a good thing that you just said, because I did that too. I found he had a couple books and I bought one and just checked it out. It's nice to be in his head, not the instructor, but the person, the real, you can't hide on the page. So it's nice to, it's nice to see.
All right. Well, it is almost 5 o'clock Pacific time. So I am going to close this out. I want to thank Chris, who is going to be with us each week. And I know he's going to get tired of me very fast.
Nah, never.
Because that is how this works. But I want to thank Joe. I want to thank Cree. I want to thank Alicia. Thank you all for commenting and for asking us questions. So much appreciated. We love your questions. So please, guys, don't be shy.
Please.
So we will see you all next week on another Run Wild with Us. Ask Chris and Lisa anything. Looking forward to it. Till then, ciao, guys.